What's this? Raycon gaming earbuds? I play video games. See, my shirt says so. The gaming earbuds. Raycon's latest set of earbuds specifically tailored for gamers. On top of having all the qualities Raycons usually come with, starting at half the price of other premium audio brands, over 31 hours of battery life, with a rechargeable carrying case with USB-C support, as well as different gel tips to get the right fit for your ears. The gaming earbuds are also water and sweat resistant, you disgusting nerd, and also come equipped with super responsive touch controls, letting you easily set things to your liking with no effort. The built-in mic ensures your friends or enemies get crystal clear sound of the opposition while you look like a madman behind the scenes. There's also a hyper-response low latency mode, reducing lag by 500%, making sure there's no lag between the game and what you're hearing. That's perfect for live streaming on your channel with your friends or keeping yourself secluded in your living room without bothering anybody in the room. I've been using it with my Nintendo Switch as of late. It just got Bluetooth support. Strangely enough, I think that would have been included day one, but whatever. Now I can play all the latest hits like Metroid Dread, of course. These earbuds let me know if an enemy is close by before I get massacred anyway. Check them out for yourself by visiting the link in the description below or by visiting buyraycon.com/Somecallmejohnny gaming to get 15% off your next Raycon purchase. Thank you as always for helping support this channel. Now let's continue on with the show. Well, as much as I would love to review this game now, it's not just time for that yet. But it's close to Halloween, and that's kind of appropriate for this video, wouldn't you say? We're now at Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, a sequel 8 years in the making. The tricky thing about being a Metroid fan is that sometimes, most times, you're kind of waiting a bit between releases. You think the gap between Metroid Other M and Federation Force was bad? It felt like forever between Super and Fusion. Besides being playable in Super Smash Bros., Samus never saw a proper game on the Nintendo 64, or even the Game Boy Color. According to Yoshio Sakamoto in an interview with Games Trademark, he couldn't fathom how to properly make a suitable follow-up to Super Metroid on the N64 with its unique controller layout. Nintendo would later approach another unidentified company to give it a shot, to which they turned down fearing the pressure of following up on Super Metroid, which Sakamoto ultimately took as a compliment. So Metroid went into a close to 8-year hibernation. But then in early 2001, Nintendo would confirm that Metroid was coming to the new Game Boy Advance. Even had a showing at that year's E3, and it's kinda hard to make it out with this footage, but Metroid 4 had one hell of a different look and feel in its earliest stages. The black suit, the seemingly rotoscoped animations, walking on walls and ceilings like it's nothing. This looks like a glorified proof of concept. To be fair, they probably just wanted to have something to showcase for E3. But I am glad this wasn't the direction they took. It looked so radically different jumping to this from Super. From what I understand, this demo wasn't well received in showing anyway, so Nintendo R&D 1 went back to the drawing board, and the very next year, Metroid Fusion was released. And Metroid Prime. Yeah, we go from 8 years of nothing to 2 games being released simultaneously. What a time it was to be alive then. And in case you missed my community post I made earlier, I'll be saving my Metroid Prime revisit to when Metroid Prime 4 gets its confirmed release date. Looks like you guys wouldn't mind me re-reviewing the whole trilogy looking back, so okay, that's what I'll do. I'll even throw in Prime Pinball and Prime Hunters for good measure, because I like you. Boy, oh boy, Metroid Fusion. This was a game I was immensely excited for. I was a huge fan at this point because of Super, and my curiosities were piqued reading magazine previews. I saw Samus, but who was this blue Samus? Was it Samus at all? What was in store for our rugged bounty hunter? The anticipation got to me, and despite already owning a Game Boy Advance when it was released, I was still just a sophomore in high school, so no job, no income. I emulated my first time with the game, with good old mouse and keyboard controls. It was painful, but I managed. It was the next Metroid game I was going to try and enjoy myself, damn it. I would thankfully add the official release to my collection that Christmas thanks to gift money I got from my grandparents. I played the hell out of this game on my original GBA wide model. We'll get into the simplified controls in a second, but this is one of those games that just feels so good on original hardware. I can't get enough of it. Just a heads up though, you might want to get some headphones and set the sound to stereo because this game on the GBA's tiny ass mono speaker is loud and crunchy. I actually scared the shit out of my friends in class one day playing this in school. I didn't think it'd be that loud, but it was funny seeing their reactions, and thankfully my handheld wasn't immediately confiscated afterwards. My love for this game on original hardware runs so deep that for this video, at least visually speaking, you probably already noticed it by now, I decided to replicate the look of it as best as I could on emulation. I don't think it's a secret that I tend to emulate games for reviews for ease of access and recording, particularly for RPGs and handheld games. So I figured, why not take advantage of some emulation tools if it's merely cosmetic? So I used MGBA with a gamma correction shader. Actually, my buddy Experiment can explain what's happening here better than I could, so Experiment, if you would.
Needed our services again,
By all means.
Alright. When the original GBA was released, the screen it was released with was rather poor quality, especially in handling the needed 15-bit colour gamut. Developers therefore would compensate this by exaggerating their colour choice, knowing they would look different on hardware. This is what you would call the identity matrix, as it's the raw RGB values that are sent to the screen. However, with modern displays and emulation, GBA games look like they had a fight with a clown circus, as the raw colour values now look overly bright, garish or washed out. Even Nintendo had to modify this slightly for the Wii U Virtual Console, and they admitted getting it wrong with the Game Boy Player by using softening filters and bad scaling in tandem with an incorrect colour gamut, which led to greater input lag even on CRT TVs. To correct this, we can use homebrew on the GameCube, such as the Game Boy interface by Extremes and or shaders like Pokefan 531s to correct the gamma and colour spacing to accurately recreate how these games would look, and in Interface's case, upscale correctly and eliminate the input lag. Now, some later games may look better without this work, as they were likely designed with the backlit AGS 101, Micro, and the Nintendo DS screen in mind, which uses a more standard colour space.
I love Metroid Fusion, but it, like a lot of other early GBA games, oversaturated the color palette to make up for the lack of a backlit screen back then. And when you view it on like raw emulation or on a virtual console release, it's only more obvious, I think. Will you cut that out?
Oh, sorry. Couldn't resist trying out the GBA video filter.
The era before smartphones and streaming was a very bizarre time. I should stress Metroid Fusion is far from ugly. The game still looks phenomenal. And it's funny that the game was built off of the same engine as Wario Land 4, which I find appropriate for Metroid considering Samus and Wario share the same art designer, coming full circle there. But once I started using this gamma correction filter along with the interframe blending, I can't go back. This is Metroid Fusion how I originally saw it. I'm a nostalgic curmudgeon who can't let go of the past. But let's get into specifics here. Samus finds herself heading back to planet SR-388 to assist biologic space lab scientists in an expedition to study the planet's new ecosystem, now that the Metroids were wiped out of existence in Metroid 2. Upon killing what seemed to be some local wildlife, a mysterious gelatinous creature finds its way into Samus, with Samus apparently thinking, that was weird, and then goes back to her ship like nothing happened. I would have immediately made a beeline to the nearest Galactic Federation clinic if I saw anything go inside me, power suit or not. All seems well until Samus suddenly loses consciousness and drifts off into a nearby asteroid belt, destroying her ship in the process. Oh, goodbye, gunship. It was a good run. She is thankfully saved by her escape pod automatically jettisoning her out to safety, where she's then picked up by biologic space labs and transferred to Galactic Federation HQ for emergency treatment. There she finds she was infected by an organism now known as the X parasite, which became so heavily embedded in her suit that large parts of it had to be surgically removed just to keep Samus alive for the time. But even then, the parasites were already swarming inside her central nervous system. Samus was this fucking close to dying, that is, until somebody found a cure. A vaccine created from Metroid DNA, created thanks to a cell culture preserved from the baby Metroid from the last game. It's later revealed that Metroids were the natural predator of the X, which is why the vaccine ended up working at all, but on a surface level, that seems kinda odd, isn't it? If I got bitten by a poisonous snake, I don't think injecting mongoose DNA would suddenly save my life, know what I mean? But Samus is saved from the X infection, and now she's rocking a new suit, the Fusion suit, the inner remains of her old power suit. I like the rubbery, membrane-esque design, but I never got why her helmet changed. Is it just the new helmet that the Federation gave her? Looks more Metroid-like. A result of her getting injected with Metroid juice? You tell me. Just moments after waking up from her coma though, Samus is informed that an unexplained explosion has rocked the nearby biologic space lab, and with next to no time to properly recover, Samus is sent to investigate. She's given a new ship and an AI companion acting as commanding officer for this venture, which Samus later names Adam, since it reminds her of her old CO during her time in the Federation. More on that in other M. I really don't want to get into that right now. It's a dark and eerie scene upon entering the ginormous space lab, not one person in sight with things looking absolutely bleak. X-parasites have managed to spread across the lab, and these motherfuckers are a seriously scary concept. If the first Metroid was inspired by Alien, this game was clearly inspired by The Thing, a movie to this day still manages to unnerve me in the best way possible. X-parasites can not only quickly kill whatever they infect, sometimes leaving nothing but the victim's bones, but they can also perfectly imitate their host and replicate like the gerbils and Rugrats. Not only that, but they can also absorb the knowledge and memories of their host, and when it comes to infecting, say, a scientist from the research station, that can spell trouble because one almost causes the entire lab to go up in smoke until Samus manages to stop it in the nick of time. By far the scariest example has to go to the SAX, introduced with this lovely close-up, thanks for that game. So it turns out that classic Samus I saw in the previews was in fact an X-parasite mimicking Samus. The pieces of the power suit that were surgically removed still had plenty of X-parasites inside them, and since the power suit was organic, as we learned in the Fusion intro, a living suit, that's gross. The X were able to replicate a Samus Aran at full power, but now it lacks a soul. It's got the ice and wave beams, super missiles, the screw attack. Shit, this whole event kicks off because the SAX breached the quarantine bay with a power bomb from within its capsule, as you see here. That caused the X-parasites from within to set off, infecting the whole station, and now that very creature is lurking around the space station looking for something to hunt down. Metroid Fusion's sound and environmental design is the best in the 2D games so far. The atmosphere and sound effects, it's everything Metroid 2 on the Game Boy tried to be, and it excels in making the first timer anxious, or at the very least, concerned. Why is there a frozen Ridley carcass in the giant space slab freezer? What the flying shit? Someone's getting a power bomb up their ass for this one. Early on, before we get any proper music, the only thing we hear is the mechanical whirling of space equipment, and then when we actually get music, it's foreboding as hell. Something's out there, but you're not exactly sure what. I recall being startled at the first boss encounter. Adam states that the X are gathering in a specific point and that you should go investigate it. And you know inside that just means a boss fight's coming. But you get there anyway, you see the X assemble, and as it's happening, it plays a brief scare chord. When I heard that the first time, the hairs on my neck shot straight the hell up. Goodness, these things can just transform into large-ass creatures on a whim, what the hell? And some of these assholes make some gut-wrenching noises. Saracen Sector 4 sounds like a bat out of hell when you damage it. And then that bat then gets a fist jammed up its ass when you kill it. But sometimes less is more, and Fusion is well aware of that. Whenever the SAX is in the vicinity, all you hear are footsteps and that low, menacing drone complete with heartbeats. The thing that will most definitely kill you if it manages to spot you is in the same room as you, and you have to do everything in your power to avoid detection. It has a beam that goes through walls. Don't risk it. Adam said it best. If you see it, just run. And seeing just run highlighted in yellow back then was so striking to me. I should just run? Okay, got it. I was like a character in a horror flick running away from the unflinching sentinel. Only this one had a gun. The first time I accidentally got seen and the music shifted to that panicky shrill and this thing was now running towards me, God, my heart rate fucking skyrocketed. And with the knowledge that the X-parasites could reproduce asexually, you learn that there could be around 10 SAX lurking around the station at once. Could be in the next room just waiting when you least expect it. Fusion can be a scary motherfucker. I still think it's the scariest game in the series easily. Sure, when you know what you're doing, it's easy to take the piss out of things. The SAX is terrifying in concept and execution, but it's also incredibly dumb at times. It never gets the idea to check behind this wall no matter how much noise you make. What was that? What was that? What was that? It's no stranger to running loops back and forth, forward and back, and then forward and back, and then go forward and back, then put 1 foot forward. It's not perfect, but even still, you don't want to mess around too much with it because towards endgame, this asshole still hits like a goddamn semi. The general plot of Fusion is investigating the biologic space lab and stifling the threat of the X-parasite. Since Samus was injected with Metroid DNA, she is now capable of absorbing X, restoring health and ammunition, and making her immune to infection. Unfortunately, at the start, Samus is damn near buck-ass nude, and this is the weakest she's been so far. Her armor is frail, she can barely take a few hits before she goes critical, she's got no upgrade, she can't even hold her gun arm with the same confidence as earlier games. Her rate of fire, though, is the fastest it's ever been, must be easier to do with a lighter suit. But I love spamming shots with Samus in this game, and it only gets better when you slowly upgrade the beam to become wider and more devastating, and goes through walls and shit. The charge beam is so overpowered here because it not only charges incredibly fast, making it very reliable as a missile replacement, but at point blank it eats things alive, including some boss fights. And thanks to the Federation, Samus will also slowly start getting upgrades sent through these data centers. So she downloads new upgrades in this game, and I can only imagine the download speeds the Federation must be rocking to achieve such a feat. Looks like a Wi-Fi connection too, so that's a doubly impressive. Samus eventually becomes more capable as you play, but to get further into the lab to fully assess the damage and situation, we have to routinely unlock security clearance to different sectors, giving us more places to investigate, while at the same time giving the X more places to swarm and infect. And it gets to a point where it's like, hey, maybe we should just head off and nuke the station from afar. It's already a lost cause, didn't have to travel very far to see that. But there is an underlying plot going on here. The first red flag is the secret Metroid facility in a highly secured section of the space station. Yeah, the Federation's making their own Metroids, probably using the same cell culture from the baby Metroid that helped make the vaccine. And while Adam states it's for peaceful applications only, you know, deep down, it's probably not. Even though I guess it's sort of a continuation of the research that was being conducted in Sarah Station back in Super. If Metroids could be harnessed for the good of galactic civilization, you know, to quote Samus from that intro sequence, then I guess it would make sense to grow more to study and harvest. But then you see alphas, gammas, and zetas in the background, and it's like, oh, never mind, they are definitely breeding them for war. Alright then, the Galactic Federation has also taken interest in the X-Parasite and want to capture them for study, something that Samus rightfully calls them idiots for even thinking, considering how quickly they fucked over the BSL station. The Federation even stopped sending support data for Samus to prevent her from becoming too strong, but thanks to Samus managing to restore other abilities by absorbing certain parasites, Samus is, unfortunately for the Federation, too strong to give a flying fuck on what they want, and plans to set the BSL station on a collision course with planet SR-388, killing the parasites within the station and on the planet itself to completely eradicate the threat. And she's able to do just that thanks to the assistance of her AI companion, Adam. Originally a cold and aloof AI just following orders and actually tries to prevent Samus from disobeying the Federation's orders later on. But it turns out the AI's brain pattern was modeled after the original Adam, and after Samus ranted the machine for not understanding the importance of human life and accidentally calling it Adam out loud, something awakens in the AI and suddenly it basically becomes a virtual Adam and helps Samus proceed with the plan to nuke the station and the planet. It's really weird, being honest. A part of me thinks it's just the AI letting Samus hear what she wants to hear to get her on her good side, but then I think, well, no, because at the end of the day it does help Samus nuke the station, which the Federation definitely didn't want to happen, so it really is Adam somehow bypassing its coding and becoming a virtual sentient CO with a vaguely sexist tagline. Video games, sci-fi, fantasy, the fuck's happening here? But that's the end goal. Samus sets off the self-destruct sequence, first time in the series we deliberately do that ourselves, and while our path is initially blocked by one of the SAX and a homegrown Omega Metroid that has a weakness to ice for some reason, someone didn't read the recipe correctly, Samus's newfound strength helps her make short work of both parties, and thanks to her absorbing the SAX parasite at the end, she even gets the ice beam and orange color to her suit back, thank God. Wasn't a fan of the Fusion Varia color, it's like if vomit could vomit. The BSL station plummets into SR-388, both going kablooey, killing everything inside, with Samus making a daring escape once again. And though she ponders what this will mean regarding her standing with the Federation, seeing as she blatantly fucked over their plans, secret or otherwise, Adam assures Samus that one of them will understand the actions they took to save the galaxy. One of them must. And for nearly 20 years, we had to wonder where the story would go, as Samus is possibly on the run now from the Federation. And now we finally have Dread to continue on from there, but we'll have to wait until Dread to jump into that. The animals from the last game also steered my ship to help save the day.
What?
Metroid Fusion is heavily more story-driven than every other game beforehand. When you get down to it, Fusion still relies on the environment to show the nitty-gritty and to keep things subtle, but the dialogue has been ramped up tenfold, on top of the hefty intro that you can't really skip unless you copy a save file where it already played out. Samus will also occasionally monologue to herself in elevator sequences, reflecting on current events. The extensive amount of dialogue does make things a little tiring on repeated playthrough since you can't outright skip cutscenes, you can only speed through the text and all that. But conversations are thankfully brief for the most part, with only a couple of exceptions towards the end of the game. Progression is linear to a T. The BSL station is divided into 6 major sectors plus a main hub, but you're only allowed to explore what you have clearance for, with shutters permanently sealed for areas the game doesn't want you stepping inside just yet. Adam will tell you exactly where you need to go to proceed and mark it on your map. It's very unlike Super Metroid, where the only thing preventing you from proceeding was lacking the necessary upgrade. And in essence, that's still the case here, but progression is more story-driven than gameplay-driven. For example, Sector 5 is the Arctic sector, but because Samus's Metroid DNA has made her vulnerable to cold temperatures, Adam heavily advises even stepping foot inside until you get a proper suit upgrade, when previously you found out about dangerous rooms with little to no warning. Yes, it's borderline hand-holding, but it's in service to the story. It makes sense given the situation Samus finds herself in this adventure, and though she starts off incredibly weak as I mentioned earlier, this rigid point A to point B exploration makes it impossible for the player to get lost. I find that despite the initial difficulty, this makes Fusion very beginner-friendly, because if there's one thing I always heard newcomers complain about in earlier games, it was getting lost, and to some that's not always a good thing, even if a big point of Metroid to me is exploring the unknown. Some folks would rather have a general idea of where to go just for the sake of seeing more of the adventure and having fun blasting things with power beams and missiles, and I think Fusion makes good on that. Yes, at the end of it all, I prefer how Super Metroid handles world exploration, but Fusion's linearity makes it my favorite Metroid game to blast on by and speedrun. Yeah, I know some of you would think that'd be Super Metroid considering how much I love it, and I do love Super Metroid. But when playing a Metroid game as fast as possible, no, that honor goes to Fusion because of its inflexible structure. It's less time I have to spend thinking of an optimal route and more time I can spend working on execution for movement and boss fights, something Fusion excels in with their gargantuan designs and presence. They are so good in this game. It's a little silly, seeing how some of these guys utilize the variability you're trying to absorb from them. The jumping condom that has the high jump, the spider that starts using the space jump when it loses its legs, but I still love it because this really emphasizes the general theme of the X-Parasite. What looks to be one thing can in fact change into something else entirely, except for Ridley X, which is just Ridley with his nuts in a vice. Being on the Game Boy Advance means less buttons, but Fusion I find managed to perfectly streamline Super's control scheme. The L button by itself can be used to aim diagonally upwards and downwards. Beforehand, both directions were mapped to different buttons, and it worked, but it was clunky. The R button, though, toggles missiles on and off, and I can't stress enough how comfortable this feels. No longer needing to hit the select button or whatever other button you mapped it to, it's just a simple press of a button you're naturally hovering your finger around anyway. Again, another reason why I think Fusion plays perfectly on original hardware. Play this on a YGBA, you won't regret it. I also like how missile upgrades stack in this game like the beams beforehand. Soon your missiles become super missiles, and then you get ice missiles since Samus can't use the ice beam given her genetic makeup. And ice missiles unfortunately come with the side effect of things taking slightly longer to kill because you have to freeze them first and then kill them, unlike super missiles, which just kills on contact. But it is a necessary evil for exploration and story progression. But again, they all come from the same reserve, so you don't have to manually select which one to use. It's less to think about, less mental clutter overall. Control is also a little tighter, as Samus not only can grab ledges to keep platforming stabilized, which, thinking back, why did it take them 4 games to implement this kind of thing at all? Anyway, Samus can grab ledges, she can also climb ladders on the wall and ceiling to give Fusion its own flavor of progression and exploration, and she doesn't have quite the same moon jump as in earlier games, so it's easier to position yourself for platforming. There's no run button anymore, so for speed boosting, Samus will automatically enter a speed boost after running a certain distance. Something I think I prefer overall, despite liking the run button from last time if you recall. Shine sparking was also made much easier to perform, no longer requiring a tight timing for directional inputs. And good thing too, because Fusion has its share of shine spark puzzle that's more of a thing for full item completion, but if you do want all those items, you better learn how the shine spark works. And just a heads up, you can shine spark into an incline to keep the shine spark going. Wall jumping was sadly nerfed. I find it easier to pull off at the very least, but you can no longer scale up a single wall as Samus won't snap back until after a certain distance, making it impossible. You can't make up for this with bomb jumping either, since the bomb explosions are so delayed in this game that bomb jumping is just straight up impossible here. And while that does suck, you are given the spring ball much earlier than previously to compensate, and the spring ball is just a good tool to have. No grapple beam though. I didn't really see a need for it considering the condensed design of the station, so I don't really miss it here. No beam combos either, though that was already a superfluous add-on in the first place. Crystal Flash is no more as well, probably because the game is swarming with recharge rooms, giving players plenty of opportunity to recharge their health and ammo. X-ray scope is also gone, so you gotta bomb everything to find hidden blocks, but I guess to make up for that, they just decided to give you an absurd amount of power bomb expansions. You get so many power bombs in this game, the max being 74, which also makes 100% in this game kind of lame because that's all you're collecting most of the time, power bomb expansions. It's like, power bombs are cool. They kill everything in sight and reveal hidden passageways very easily, but they're also very loud. It's like a rabid cappuccino machine. The BSL station may be a giant space stalactite on the outside, but inside it might as well be its own planet, artificial or otherwise. It's a research station filled with a lot of simulated ecosystems all in the name of science. Lush, overgrown jungles, overheated industrial landscapes, dark caverns brimming with nocturnal life. It even has a pool filled with dangerous creatures, and thanks to the X-Parasites, there's no limit to the kind of things you'll face. A lot of creatures you might recognize from previous games. But because of the amorphous nature of the parasite, sometimes you might find them combining to form completely new threats, like you can kill a fish X, right? But if you don't absorb the free-roaming parasite, it can fly into another fish becoming a bigger fish, or it can fly into the nearby space pirate X and form a new aquatic space pirate hybrid that's faster in water. It's fascinating to see what new creatures can form and block Samus's progression, and it's a great way to make the X feel unique as a threat. It's a quality I love about them. Needing to collect them for health and ammo though can be a little cumbersome because they're constantly moving, eventually leaving the screen altogether if you take too long compared to the static pickups to the last game. Please stay still, you jiggly booger. Though it may not be as open-ended and mysterious as Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion nails the atmosphere and gameplay elements like a good sequel should. It makes a few sacrifices to overall utility, but it cannot be denied that Samus shoots and moves better than ever before, and this is a game that puts those skills to the test because some of these enemies in boss fights will kick your ass from their damage output and size, but it never crosses that line into becoming overly difficult. It's not as egregious as Samus Returns, since we now have that to compare to nowadays. No, I think anyone can pick up and play Fusion, even non-Metroid fans. I know plenty who started with this game and worked their way backwards because they enjoyed this one so much. And forwards because, they were hooked. It's a great time, a high recommendation from me. It's heavy on dialogue, but kinetic as shit with fast-paced gameplay and condensed environmental design. A fantastic, handheld Metroid experience. 2 more games before we head into Dread. Next up is the 2004 remake of the original game Metroid Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance. As always, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, get vaccinated if possible. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.